Ever since the release of Fortnite Battle Royale on PC, I've been heavily addicted to the game. So much so that it has nearly surpassed my League of Legends addiction, which at this point kinda seemed impossible. Obviously, I'm not the only person taken back by this, but the question is, why does Fortnite continually keep growing past everyone's expectations? Is it possibly because it's free? Or is it simply because it appeals to a much larger audience and is much simpler to understand? Or maybe because it's just more easily accessible to gamers? Obviously, yes, the price has something to do with it. Being free is a huge plus for them. But it could also be because of the cartoonish art design and the simple to understand mechanics that anyone can play and have a fun time with. Then on the other side, we have the game that popularized the Battle Royale genre, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. The game that has much more realistic graphics and a higher price point. There are certainly people out there who won't share the same feelings as me, and that's perfectly okay. But even they can't deny the juggernaut that Fortnite has become over the past couple months. So here are a couple of reasons why I believe that Fortnite's taken over the Battle Royale genre. So obviously one of the biggest differences between these two games are the graphics. PUBG has a much grittier, more realistic look to it, which is why many hardcore players prefer it to Fortnite. And Fortnite, like I mentioned earlier, has a much more cartoonish design, which is why I believe that it appeals to a greater variety of players. From a design standpoint, Fortnite is much more appealing to the eye without having to be graphically impressive. This will definitely help it down the road, seeing as games with this stylized art direction tend to age a lot better compared to games with more realistic graphics. Another huge plus side to Fortnite is that the games go much faster than PUBG. To most adults or anyone with children, this is a huge deal. In an average game, by the time you finish looting your first area, there is already half the number of players in the game as when you started. This is primarily due to the fact that the match is much smaller than PUBG and the combat overall is much quicker. The concept of both games is the same and actually quite simple, just be the last one standing out of 100. But the mechanics and itemization of the two different games are actually quite different. Fortnite obviously has the base building mechanics, which is arguably one of the more difficult parts of the game, especially if you're new to it, and PUBG has its vehicles, which makes it a lot easier to get around the map and can also be used as weapons themselves. As for the weapons, Fortnite made theirs a lot easier to understand with the color-coded rarity system. To newer players, it makes it a lot easier to understand which guns are more powerful. Gray being the most common, green being uncommon, blue being rare, purple being epic, and orange as the legendary. So depending on the gun and the rarity level is how much damage you're going to be doing. PUBG does have a rarity system to its items, but it's not displayed clearly, so it makes it harder for newer players to know what guns are good and what guns aren't. That just comes with playing the game more. As the patches roll out in Fortnite, they're adding more and more items and different game modes to make each game more unique and fun. Whether you're playing sneaky silencers or playing in 5 teams of 20. It's hard to deny that Fortnite likes to innovate on its game and keep things fresh. It's not just their game modes that they like to innovate on either. They're always adding new and wacky items to the game, whether it's the boogie bomb that makes people dance whenever it blows up next to them, or the soon-to-be jetpack, which I can only imagine the crazy things I'm going to see with that. Accessibility is key to this game, and hands down is the reason why it's beating PUBG. In addition to being free to play, Fortnite is available on every major console minus the Switch, but we'll see how long that lasts. In addition, Fortnite has recently made its way onto iOS and soon to be on Android smartphone. PUBG has also made its way onto smartphones, and is actually doing really well. But the real key difference here is Fortnite on mobile is actually cross-playable with PS4, PC, and Xbox One, which is actually kind of crazy to think about. And as long as you link your Epic account to whatever you're playing on, the game is actually cross-progression as well. So say I level up while I'm playing on my phone, it'll actually transfer that progression onto my PC when I get on there. One thing I almost forgot to mention, if you're playing on your smartphone, you will not be paired up with PC or console players unless you opt in for it. Which I'm really glad they did because you're at such a disadvantage compared to the person who's playing with a mouse and keyboard. All in all, both games are tremendously fun and have their own attributes that really make them stand out from each other. PlayerUnknown's Battleground is a much more grounded game with a serious and more competitive tone to it, as where Fortnite is a much more casual and goofier game. It really just comes down to player preference and what you prefer. However, I do believe Epic is doing a far better job making their game more accessible to the public, which is really starting to show. Hopefully both games keep up their great work and continue to prosper, because I have a feeling this year at E3 we're going to be seeing a lot more Battle Royale game modes. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.